Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Next Level Podcast, the podcast, the show where we bring industry leaders to come share with us their journey, their experience, and their insights of what brought them to, what we call the next level. So with me today is someone that I admire a lot, someone who I think is very intelligent, and also someone I respect a lot. So this is Nicole Ong, everybody. Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, thanks for coming to the Next Level Podcast. So last episode, we had someone from the entertainment industry, Muna.
Yeah,
so
I think I watched that one. Yeah.
So this episode, I think maybe the reason why we invited you is that we wanted to delve into a world that's not so familiar with a lot of people, the world of finance, which just by saying that term itself, I was like, okay, a bit intimidating for me already. So maybe you can introduce yourself to everybody that's listening.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nicole. So I'm currently with a private credit fund called Kai Investment Management. Private credit would mean that we provide alternative financing to, in particular for us, the Asian SMEs who don't usually get funding from banks because the size is probably too small for banks to do, or it's too large for single family offices to do. We started this firm as a spin-off from having worked together previously in other investment opportunities. And we realized the loneliness of being an entrepreneur. Some of us were ex-entrepreneurs ourselves, and we thought that would give us the edge.
Wow,
Yeah.
Nice. So I have here on paper a little overview of your career, and it's like, oh my goodness, you've done already so much, But before we go into that, let's kind of chart out your a little background journey, right? So when you were studying after secondary school and whatnot, what did you choose, and is it related to what you're doing now?
So right after secondary school, I took mass communications at Ngee, and no, I don't think I made the right choice. I realized after 3 years and then actually working in advertising for a while that it wasn't a career that I enjoyed. It wasn't something that I was particularly good at, or it wasn't something that I loved. And then I just took a break after advertising to kind of figure out, try my hand at different jobs, different industries, everything from yogurt to trading. And I really liked working in this family office trading. And I guess that's how it all started. Yeah, finance and everything. That was probably the beginning.
So tell me about Athena. How did that come about?
Okay, so I guess a couple of years in trading led me to kind of venture into different areas of finance, which were looking more into investing into particular deals. Athena came about because at that point in time, blockchain was this huge new thing. And I guess I just had a penchant for looking at really messy things and wanting to dissect it, take it apart, hack the code, and just lay it out for you simply. So we thought, a bunch of ex-traders and finance students thought that we had an advantage because we were as young as the people who were starting these companies. And we were trying to bridge the gap with investors who just didn't have the resources at that point of time, or just didn't think this was a big enough trend to set up a team to just look at these deals case by case. So we were like the outsourced third party who would come in and go, okay, I'll identify this for you. I would verify and make sure it's credible before you put your money into it. So we're like the CSI agents, right? Except, of course, over the years, as blockchain got even more popular, people had their own in-house teams. And a lot of us pursued further education after that. And I guess that's how I also realized that, it was really lonely being an entrepreneur. It's really hard to build a business. You give up almost every day and you fail more times than you succeed. At the same time, you're really scared that, you screw up and you don't know what to do with yourself, right? That's probably how I found this community of girls who were doing the exact same thing. Yeah, that's how I found SoGal.
Nice. So SoGal was December 2018, was it?
Yeah, probably December 2018. So there wasn't a chapter lead in Singapore as of yet. And so I just reached out to the HQ in New York and said, I would love to volunteer. I really want to find a community in Singapore that is going through the same thing that I'm going. I can't be the only one.
Yeah.
It just so happened that the girl who started SoGal Ventures, Pocket, she was actually based in Singapore at that point of time.
Nice.
She still is now. So we became really good friends with the rest of the community here.
Yeah, I just want to pivot off that a little bit and ask you what is the significance of having such a female-led entity like SoGal?
It's community, it's support. A lot of these girls they're either founders or funders of, different industries. And you might not find somebody who's in the exact same position as you, or the exact same industry as you, but they have the same journey. It doesn't really matter what sector you're in. Truth is, most, if not all, go through the same problems on a day-to-day basis. And there's different ways that we cope, right? How do you build without burnout? How do you solve identity crisis? How do you pivot when things are just not going well? And how do you trust someone enough to look in at your business and try to identify what exactly is going wrong? How do you trust someone with your baby, right?
Yeah.
And they understand all this. And, throughout the many networking events where, we try to remind each other and prioritize not just our mental health and our physical health, but having that social circle and trying to lean onto somebody to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think most leaders have a problem. We don't know how to ask for help. We don't even know what to ask for. So we just silently bear it, which gets bad.
I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Okay, so with SoGal, right, was there a particular incident or like an anecdote that you can share whereby, having a community really helped?
There's quite a few. So when I was doing Athena, I came across a lot of incidents where I was either mistaken as the PA or I was hit on at a meeting. Quite a lot of embarrassing situations where I blamed myself that it was happening. I thought that for some reason I was getting passed over one of my other team members because, there was something I was not doing right. And then I felt pressured to do even better the next time. And then I just realized that, I just kind of realized that it was just because I was a girl. SoGal kind of helped me rebuild that confidence after Athena. So I was going through a huge imposter syndrome, identity crisis thing where I just thought, who did I think I was to become an entrepreneur or to think that I could lead a team? Like, what am I doing with all these people who followed me from their other jobs? Can I really give them the life that, I'm promising? You're just carrying so many things. It was so hard to unpackage and just go, wait a minute, breathe. Everyone else is going through the same thing. Ask for help. Yeah. So SoGal helped me rebuild that confidence, helped me understand what I was going through, actually pinpoint, connected the dots and go, okay, take a step back. You need a breather, do something else first. Yeah.
Understood. Now, you mentioned the term right there, imposter syndrome, that really struck home because last year at the Shine Now event, I think a lot of young people said that one of the reasons why they don't feel confident enough to like dive into the career that they want to do is because of imposter syndrome, whereby they have this fear of like, what if I don't fit in, or like, what if I'm not meant to do what I'm supposed to do? And also because like, everyone starts at a certain level, but like when you are entering a space, you're kind of immediately competing with people who have been at it for a while. So, in terms of overcoming imposter syndrome, like what is something that you can, share, or a tip that you can share for people to kind of overcome it or manage it maybe?
Well, my coping mechanism would be to really take a breath. Okay, I'm not sure how, maybe imposter syndrome presents itself in different ways to different people. For me, it just comes as a really harshly critical voice in my head that sounds very reasonable and very rational, just going, you're not right for this. You need to quit now, cut your losses, nip it in the bud. And it becomes something very hard to rationalize with yourself and go, this is not the truth. This is just your fear talking. You need to pick this apart and find out what the root cause is. And because it comes as such a rational voice, when someone else looks in on the problem and tells you, you know what, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, and you think it's something that you're doing wrong, you start to think you're crazy. So I think a lot of reflection, meditation, journaling, I look back at some of my journal entries where I'm in that zone of having or being criticized or criticizing myself. And I look at it and go like, holy shit, you are crazy. Yeah, but when you look back on it, you know how to identify the triggers that get you there, and you get to stop it earlier before it becomes like a full-fledged meltdown. Yeah.
Thanks for that. In your line, you work with a lot of like leaders as well.
Yeah.
Like, and being a leader yourself, there's this concept like idea that imposter syndrome is really just for people who are starting out. But I'm just wondering, like, do leaders also experience imposter syndrome?
I think we experience it way more than anyone else. I guess a large part of it is self-doubt. And another large part of it is leaders tend to assume a lot of responsibility and think that, they're responsible for every single moving part. which is not the truth. I mean, that's why you have a team and that's why you pick them, because they're talented at what they do. We don't know how to lean in to talk to people and, try to express and ask for help. And we try to put everything else on our plate. And at the same time, we're concerned about whether you're making enough money, whether you're going to stay. I think leaders they go through it a lot more. They just probably aren't very good at showing it. And that's probably why, you don't get help as often, because you don't know how to ask for it. Yeah.
Is that something that you think, in time to come, people can learn to manage better, like this idea of imposter syndrome on every level?
I think so. I mean, I feel there are a lot of podcasts, there are a lot of meditation sequences now, guided stuff that try to help you identify what's causing that imposter syndrome for you. Sometimes, it's just deeply ingrained into us, a certain belief that we just happen to think that it's right. I mean, if you spent 29 years thinking that something is right and someone suddenly tells you it's wrong, it's a bit hard for you to suddenly change your mind. Challenge yourself, be with people or, connect with people who often challenge you or challenge your views. And you might be able to see exactly, someone else is going through the same thing. You can be there for each other. Yeah.
Understood. Now, on the topic of being a leader, now you are the chapter lead of SoGal in Singapore, which also means that you're a female leader. Now, what are some of the challenges that you faced being like a female leader in this industry?
Well, I think most of the people in the SoGal community, we got there because we realized that there was a diversity gap, right? Technically, diversity in a workforce and economy makes things a lot better. A lot of female-led businesses were not getting funded by VCs because most of the people who are sitting on VCs are men. The fact of the matter is women sell to women better than men could ever sell to women, right? How are you going to sell me lipstick? I wouldn't probably buy it. Would you actually know how many lipsticks I would buy in a month? You would think maybe one. How many can she use anyway? She's only got one mouth, right? But girls could probably buy up to 20. Never use all of them, but still need 20. And I guess that's how, being that kind of leader to try and champion change is not an easy task. But when you are in a group of people who are both funders and investors, it's easier for the investor to go, okay, this is what we would need if you want to propose a product like this into an industry or sector like this. And the entrepreneurs to go, okay, these are the challenges that I'm facing of breaking into this industry and getting funding. What am I doing wrong? So it's like everyone's helping each other to succeed. And there are a lot of great books. I think it was She Wins, You Win, where, each time a woman in business succeeds, the chance for every woman after that gets higher of succeeding. And the same thing for failure, right? So we should encourage each other to succeed. Screw this cancel culture.
So Nicole, I want to talk to you about the idea of pursuing your passions on a very personal level, whereby you have to deal with not just yourself, but also your family. Because I think in the previous episode, when I was talking to Muna, we kind of explored the idea of, on one hand, understanding what you want to do, but then also managing expectations from family.
Yeah.
So something that Muna and I brought about was that we both had parents who did not really agree with what we wanted to do. And then of course I was watching you on Singapore Social as well. okay, I won't mention that show too much, okay? But there was this idea of managing family expectations as well. So how was that like for you on your journey?
Well, okay. I mean, I think going into post-secondary school, I adopted this mantra of do first, think later. If you already do it, there's nothing much you can do about it. I think what we need to understand is that our families are just protective of us, right? When we go through past our 16, past our 18, and we start exploring more of this world that they obviously have seen a lot more of than we have, and they have deeply believed that, the way things have been done in the last 50 years, it should be the way that it should be done in the next 50 years. And they don't want to change it. It's going to be hard to change the mind of, like I said just now, someone who's deeply believed that this is right for the last 50 years. Yeah, how do you even begin to explain what being an entrepreneur or blockchain is? Starting a business, in the 60s or 70s was hard work, and it was a brick and mortar business, and it was employing tons of people, being responsible for a lot of that. The startup culture was never quite present back then. So sometimes it's not because they're opposed to what you're doing, they just don't understand it. And how do you even begin to explain, what these new things are? So I think it just takes time, but I don't think that should stop you from trying to actually pursue what you want to do. If it's something you feel very strongly about, and it's something that and you can combine with what you're good with, then you should do it. Whether or not your parents go, I don't think you should do it. Yeah, don't let that stop you.
Nice. Now, what about on the friends end of things? Because just now you mentioned that you switched from mass comm to a finance world. Did your social circle kind of like understand what this world you're entering into was like?
I think I've always been sort of an introvert, and I guess my social circle has always been quite small. So the fast friends that I've made mostly have been from the same kind of finance or academic type of background, and we've stayed friends ever since. But the journey of going through being an entrepreneur, or being in finance, or being a woman in this industry, there's a very few select people that I would say I would call friends, like who I can count on for anything. Yeah.
Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that there were some perceptions that people had of you being a woman in this industry. So I kind of want to dive deep into that a little bit, whereby how did you manage that? Like, what was it a struggle? I mean, obviously it had to be a struggle overcoming that. What were some ways that, you kind of overcame those kind of like talk?
I think being a young woman in a mostly male-dominated industry kind of gets you relegated to sometimes being always misunderstood as the salesperson, marketing person, the PA. You get hit on at work. You think it's your dressing, but that's not really, that's not the point. You shouldn't be hit on in a professional setting. Yep. You should feel safe in your industry. You should be safe in your community. So I think overcoming that is actually just knowing your self-worth, knowing that you have talent, you have merit, and you got there because of these reasons and not for anything else. And don't let anyone, tell you otherwise. Don't let somebody point out, it's because the way you dress and therefore I'm hitting on you in a professional setting. That's not right, no matter where it is. So yeah, I don't think it makes much of a difference. Women definitely get it more, but just have self-worth, like constantly tell yourself that you are enough. Yeah.
Nice. No. On that note, right, when you were at a young age where you said, I want to go into this industry and I'm ready to do that, like, well, obviously there was still that imposter syndrome and whatever to navigate through. Yeah. Like, what made you say like, yes, I'm going to do this?
Do first thing later.
Okay.
Just do it. Well, I mean, I could always change my mind. It was a huge pivot going from advertising to finance, and it took a lot of courage to just suddenly quit, because I then had to explain to my mom, like, hey, you know what? Yeah, I kind of did 3 years in advertising. I don't think it's for me. I'm going to quit. That was a very hard conversation. So it's still probably a hard conversation now, but yeah.
Was there anything that you would have done like differently in that sense, whereby, now that you kind of look back on your journey and say like, okay, I've done what I've done. Any insights that you would give like younger Nicole in that sense?
Well, I think the best advice I could give myself is to figure out what you want and learn how to ask for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think there were a lot of things I thought I wanted, but I guess I didn't really. And it took a lot of lessons in different industries and part-time roles before I could go, okay, that's really not for me. And then going, okay, let me try this. But I didn't know how to ask for help and I didn't know where to turn to. I think that's always been a problem. Is there an exercise in which you can do that? Or do you have to really go through the motion of like, okay, I've tried this? Well, no, you can make lists. You can talk to people in those industries first to try and figure out if that really is for you. Mm-hmm. Finance isn't as glamorous as it looks. It's really not like any of the finance movies you see. You spent, 80% of your time looking at, hundreds of pages of reports. You really have to love looking at those numbers. You have to love making sense out of this complication in front of you. You have to believe in the business enough to put money behind it. And this is not even your money, it's other people's money. So you have to be really careful with that. Just always have that pep talk with yourself, I guess, and always come back to whether this is what you truly want. Do you feel like you're fulfilling, the best of your talents? Are you giving it everything that you got? Yeah.
I want to bring you back to the point when you were in advertising. You said 3 years, right? And then, if let's say someone has invested 3 years of their time into something, the idea of like, oh, I've already done so much, like I'm already this deep in. It's like, at one point what was it that you thought that said like, okay, I think this is definitely not for me, and that 3 years I'm willing to let it go,
I think I started working in advertising because I thought that's what I studied, and therefore that was the natural progression. It was kind of fun. I mean, in advertising, you get to go to like different events, you get to work with like really exciting brands. But I felt like I wasn't being challenged in the way that I wanted to be challenged. Not to say that advertising work is not challenging. It just, I didn't feel fulfilled. Yeah, and what would you know at 21 or 22 what fulfillment is? It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. I didn't feel like, okay, I don't mind working till 5 a.m, or I just don't feel like getting up to go to work today.
Right.
I mean, now, working from home, where I feel working from home, you work more hours than you work in an office. You're constantly motivated. You're looking for a new way to do things, in the old setting, how to keep relevant. It's just exciting for me. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks for sharing that. Also, when I was looking through your social media, I realized that you were at a lot of networking types of events. So, at of course, like the Shine Now event, networking is one of the pillars of the event as well. There's this whole idea that networking is very intimidating to people. If you were to give any tips on the idea of like networking, what can you share with our audience?
Okay, so I'm really introverted, so it's very hard for me to network as well. It's very hard for me to start the conversation.
Okay.
But I have thankfully a lot of very extroverted friends or like extroverted team members that start the conversation and then I contribute as and when. But I guess just make sure that you're networking for the right reasons and you have a goal for it. If you're there to, figure out more about the industry, then do your research on, who's going to be at this networking event that is useful and have the questions prepared. Yeah.
So I guess the two tips would be peg yourself to people who are more chatty.
Extroverted. If you're scared of starting conversations, or else, pick a few.
And then the second part is to be prepared and do your research, right?
Yeah.
Now, Nicole, I want to ask you, entering the finance industry is not something that anyone can just say, okay, I want to go in. So like when you made that switch from advertising to finance, like how did you go about that, navigating that?
Just taking up different part-time roles in different parts of finance to actually figure out. I mean, finance is huge. There's so many different parts that school doesn't really prepare you for. You learn the basics in school, but I think experience makes a huge difference into which sector you want to get into. Investment banking or private banking is always the sexier, most popular choice, but it's also the toughest to get into. And you don't really know, probably 50, 60-hour weeks that you're going to put in for probably the next 4 to 5 years before you get to anywhere significant to what you see in the movies. And there are so many other aspects of finance that are overlooked. I guess it's just trying your hand at part-time roles, maybe even reaching out to people on LinkedIn, doing that cold messaging thing, looking at people in those industries and that exact role that you might be applying for, just going, hey, I'm not from the same school as you, but I'm looking at applying a job in your industry, in your bank or, in your firm. And I want to know, do I have what it takes? What does it take? And what does your 9 to 5 look like? Am I barking up the wrong tree? Yeah, ask for advice. Just really ask for help.
Has people approached you to do so?
Most of the SoGal community networking events, we do that. People have talked to me on LinkedIn. Some people have reached out to me on Instagram. I just try to give you as, a wide berth of what I'm doing as possible. And definitely when people say that, that they want to be a startup founder, I just warn them it's not easy and it's not glamorous. It's really hard work. I hope you're prepared to roll your sleeves up and face, whatever that's going to come your way. Reach out anytime if you need advice. And I can tell you of, the hard falls that I took. And how to avoid those. Yeah.
So, I would say that the go-getter types would be very easy, like in approaching people or cold messaging people. But then there are those people who are not as confident, who kind of fear, right? They see oh my God, Nicole. So they don't know how to approach you. Is there a reason for them to be scared at all?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm probably more scared of you walking up to me than, for you to walk up to me. Yeah, if you're scared, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I mean, I love reaching out to people on LinkedIn as well, because then I can hide behind that screen and not have to be very emotional in person, but just reach out to me for sure.
I think at this point in our careers, we've all definitely done cold contact before.
Rejection.
If there was one tip that you can do that you can give with regard to like cold calling or cold messaging, like what is it that you can give?
Reach out for that common factor. I mean, see if that person was from the same school as you. They have similar interests. Sometimes people have, great bios where they say, oh, my part-time hobby is cooking, or they happen to know a mutual friend. It's easier to do cold messaging on LinkedIn or Instagram if you have a mutual friend. If not, then try to find a similar interest, and that gets the conversation going. I would say try to use LinkedIn more than Instagram, because that's more in a professional setting and you don't really want, to reach out just on a personal level, especially if you're looking to getting into that industry.
Right.
Yeah.
So the tip is to be professional, but also like humanize that interaction.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. So before we end this podcast, I just want to ask you, like, what's the future looking like for you? Do you have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan? Are you able to share?
Yeah, I have so many years of plans. Something that really hit home for me in investing now is that sometimes we throw money at the wrong things. And what really struck a chord with me is investing sustainably, or investing with a measurable impact. A couple of us in Singapore, both startup founders and investors, kind of got together and realized that there was a funding gap, meaning there was not enough money going to projects that actually, for example, cleared waste out of the sea, or, made sure that you are not using plastic straws and you're instead, conserving energy, for example. So I think the next 5 to 10 year plan would be to really plug that gap, make a difference. If more people stand in the gap, it wouldn't be such a huge hole. Try to find more people in this community who have that same idea. And hopefully, we make a change in 10 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's such an exciting journey. And but then for the listeners who are about to start their journey, right? Let's just end off with this podcast on some tips for them. Like if you were to give them any words of wisdom that you can share, like what would it be?
Definitely still learn how to ask for it if you know what you want. Don't be afraid to try different things. It's never too late to start anything either. I didn't start, finance sales like 24, 25, and I thought that was late. Yeah. So it's really never too late. Yeah, just go for it.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Such an insightful one for me as well. Nicole, thank you so much for coming down today. Did you enjoy it? I hope you did.
It's quite scary, but yes.
It's scary for me. It's like, I don't know if I'm asking intelligent enough questions. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much. This is the Next Level Podcast.